Hello, everybody. And what the heck? I messed up the intro. Welcome to another episode of Truth Wanted. I think that's the first time I've ever messed up the intro. I'm your host, ObjectivelyDan. This is the live call-in talk show where we talk to people about what they believe and why, live Fridays at 7 p.m. Central every single week. And every single week, I have a very special guest. This week's guest is... You may have seen him on TikTok. You may have seen him on the Atheist Roundtable. It's Jmike. What's going on, Jmike?
Hey, Dan. Thank you for having me on. I'm still kind of pinching myself that I would ever be on an ACA show, so this is really cool for me.
Hey, well, you're here now, and I appreciate you being on. You've got some new projects that you're working on and that you're doing. But before we talk about that, I want to first go to a special announcement about what we're doing for the end of the year. Those of you guys who were on Discord last week, I told you we had a special announcement. So here it is. We're going to play the video for you right now. Check it out. That's right, everybody. For those of you who are listening on the audio version who didn't see that, we are doing an award show this year for Truth Wanted, and we're calling it the Golden Picos, right after the name of my cat. And yes, you can vote for it right now. The link for that is going to be in the description. But for those of you listening, it's tiny.cc/Golden Picos. It's really, really cool that we're doing this. The cool thing is we've selected all of our nominees, but you guys are going to be the ones that actually votes for the winners. So we got a couple different categories, 9 different categories overall. And I can't wait to see your guys' responses. And that's going to be our special kind of Christmas Day episode, since Christmas Day actually falls on a Friday this year. And rather than have everybody come to make a show on Christmas, we're going to do this for you instead. I think that's a pretty good compromise. So please, guys, go check that out. Again, link for that is going to be in the description. So let's get back to our regularly scheduled program. I'm here again with Jmike. Jmike, like I said, you've been doing a couple different things. You have a new project going on right now called Axioms On Trial. And so I thought you could maybe start by talking about that.
Yeah, so I originally hosted on the Atheist Roundtable, which you've come on, and we had Jenna Belk and Drag and some people who've hosted on the ACA as well. I've had a bunch of school stuff, so I haven't been able to give as much dedication to that as well. But the channel that we're doing now is called Axioms On Trial. I do that with a co-host of mine who's a philosophy major named Cease, or he goes by Cease to Know, who is just an absolutely brilliant person to work with. So it's fun for me because I'm just being able to learn alongside the the person that I'm working with. So what we basically do is we have anyone from TikTok apologists, which yes, they exist, believe it or not. Yeah, and don't shun the the idea that it's not worth doing, because there's videos that people do on there that get hundreds and hundreds of thousands of likes. So there's a lot of eyeballs there, and I would encourage anybody in the audience to do counter apologetics on there as well. But we'll talk to anybody from that to guys like that have PhDs in New Testament studies. So really anybody and everybody, we put ourselves out there for a conversation. And it's really just a lot of philosophy, theology, science, and the fun stuff.
Quick on the TikTok thing too, because I there's a lot of people that are older that watch the show that don't really get TikTok, and I barely get it myself, and I'm about to be 25 pretty soon. So it's like, yeah, it's kind of weird, it's kind of different, but like, people were saying, oh, you shouldn't waste time on this Facebook or Twitter thing, or even this YouTube thing either. And all of these things have blown up, and TikTok already has the numbers. There's already millions of people that are using TikTok. And on top of that, they already have content creators, up and coming, Christian apologists and spiritual gurus and all kinds of stuff that are making this content that's affecting not just people like us, but younger than us, like kids, lots of kids watching these TikToks, and how videos are found on there isn't the same as YouTube, where you either get recommended to it or you're searching for it. Like, they have continuous feeds where you can just come through stuff that are based on your interests. And so TikTok scares the hell out of me, because that, I think, is going to be a catalyst for a whole other just world of BS that people like us who like to talk about BS and like to talk about, what we think is true, it isn't true, are going to have to deal with, because people are going to start with claims that they just heard on TikTok one time and just thought were true. So it's important what you're doing, I think, when you're talking about, stuff like that in particular, but also just all the other stuff you're doing on there as well. So, like, tell us, like, what kind of conversations that you've been having, because I know you've been talking to, like, people from a different range of beliefs, shall we say.
Sure. Yeah. So I can't please everybody is what I've figured out. So, like, if I'm either picking too much on Christian theology, or I'm picking too much on, like, witch talk, which is a thing where kind of hang out, so to speak.
Yep.
And the spiritual kind of realm, I do a lot. So it can go from the Ron Wyatt type of claims of, like, a Duru Pernar site, or all the way up to the idea motor effect with, like, Ouija boards, or, the pendulum, right, and trying to explain, the oscillation between potential and kinetic energy, and just try to, like, give some insight on, like, hey, we've understood this since 1852. This has been, there have papers on the idea motor effect. Like, my whole thing is that if you have some idea that you have in your, like, that you think is true, and you're convinced that that's the case, like, it shouldn't have any problem investigating that. And so you shouldn't get upset by that, because anything I believe, I'm going to kind of say, bring it on. Like, if you want to test it out, because I feel like that should always be scrutinized in some way, especially if it's true, because you're not going to have a problem coming out of the fight.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, that's what this show is all about, right? Talking about what people believe and why. And the why part sometimes gets people up, because maybe they don't know why, or maybe they just haven't thought about it all the way through, or maybe they did have a why, but they found out that why wasn't as good. And yeah, like, it's important to kind of debunk that stuff, especially if, like, what I see on TikTok in particular is, you have people who do this fake stuff, whether it's CGI or something, whatever, stuff that, like, something like you or me be able to point out, because we might have some experience with graphic design or something, but somebody who doesn't may not be able to point out. And then there's, like, the other kinds of stuff where people are giving some kind of advice, or they're talking about, they pretend like they're experts on some particular topic. It might be a health expert or a Bible expert or something, and they just give their quick 1 minute hot take, and they make it sound very authoritative. It's like, we talked about Plandemic, the reason why Plandemic, that documentary about how the COVID-19 virus is, was a conspiracy, well, that spread really well because it looked like a Netflix produced documentary in terms of, like, production quality. Like, it wasn't just made out of some guy's basement.
Yep.
And so I think that's something you see with TikTok, because, like, as long as you have good lighting, as long as you have a decent camera, maybe you get a couple cuts in there, you can make a TikTok video look really slick. And just that presentation alone is going to be convincing for some people about what's true, what isn't. And I really worry about that. I really do.
Yeah. And I've kind of put it this way too, where I've had people message me and say, your videos have helped, or they've steered me into different locations that have helped me, or whatever it might be. And the theme of that to me is, like, if you're convinced in any of that way towards what I say, like, still apply that skepticism. Like, don't just believe. And I think that's the difference between, like, what people who care about truth and people who don't, is that they're going to say, look, if I convinced you, like, please doubt what I'm saying, because that's the whole thing that I'm getting at, right? So it's not that this is excluded from what I'm saying. It's just that you need to apply this universally and honestly. I mean, that's the best thing to me, the best thing you can do is be intellectually honest. At least just make an attempt to be so. It shines through.
I think so. And like, there's some beliefs that maybe I could convince you are true in a minute. There's a lot of beliefs that I should not be able to convince you are true in just a minute. And like, that's all you have on TikTok. And that's what some people try to do. Of course, people do like multi-part TikToks and stuff like that. But the medium is the message, right? The medium is the metaphor. I mean, like, people are going to adapt to this, technology, this new social media presence, and just make the most convincing, slick thing possible. And like, it seems to me, I don't know, I feel a sense of powerlessness when I look at that, because I can make my responses, but if I'm not looking as good as some of these other people, or if it gets buried amongst a whole other kinds of responses, people aren't looking at those responses, especially with TikTok. They're just looking at that video and then they scroll on to the next feed. They're not even looking at the comments most of the time. So
yeah,
what do you think is the best way of combating this? Because I know you're trying to make these responses, but do you think we'll have to adapt to different kinds of tactics in the future? Or, what's your goal even when you're doing this?
So my goal is pretty simple. It's really just to promote but critical thinking. So it helps to kind of understand my background. My family is, my mom, my dad, like, they were like religious. My mom's Catholic, but I was given the most ultimate freedom in the regards of kind of going through that process, right? I was never forced to go to church. I was never forced to believe X, Y, and Z. It was, things were presented to me by friends and family and things like that. But I always ultimately had this choice. And I don't want to come off like as a pat myself on the back, so to speak, but I see the methodology that I kind of been able to go through, and then the things that happen when you're younger that stay with you, that makes it really hard for you to kind of break out of these thoughts. And so my thing is, I know that's a process, and I know you need to kind of hear these things over and over again. And that can work negatively, because you can hear the same thing maybe 3 or 4 times. You go, oh, I've heard that 4 or 5 times. That must be true. That's not really what I'm trying to do. It's the fact that you take that and then you can test that, right? You can try to, my whole thing is akin to the scientific method. I mean, we should be able to verify this, test this. There should be some peer review involved. There should be something that distinguishes your imagination and makes it reflective of the reality we're experiencing. And so I always try to put it like, you're never going to have the answers there, or maybe the best method. But what I like to tell people is that everybody's trying to put a mirror in front of reality. And that mirror represents truth, right? And so, of course, when you lay down models and theories, you're going to have cracks, you're going to have blemishes, you're going to need to get Windex out and try to scrub the mirror, so to speak. But by the end of the methodology, you should at least not, like, the idea is to not be able to distinguish the mirror that's reflecting reality from reality itself. It should be as close as it possibly could. And so I think the more that people try to at least keep in their head that these things we say in science, or these things that we claim are true, are really just models of what we're experiencing, because we are kind of limited and blocked off from that, right? We're not going to just have that ability. And that's what I love, man. Discovery, like, we weren't born with all the answers, and we get the option to have discovery. Like, how cool is that? I think that's just one of the coolest things that we get to be a part of, and pass that down to other generations. So
yeah, you're right. I mean, it does, it can take some time. Like, not everybody's going to be convinced just by one TikTok that they see something, as much as I catastrophize about that. Like, I wasn't convinced of the truth of Christianity just because one person told me one time. It was a culmination of my life experiences, me going to church and me having those activities and kind of, shall we say, simulating some of those spiritual experiences, I guess, when it comes to those worship times and stuff like that. So, that there's definitely going to be multiple ways to approach it. I can't help but think that, like, when it comes to stuff like TikTok, I guess the best way to do it is to just put that content out there and just make it as good as everybody else that's making stuff on there, and just compete for those ideas. Because unless TikTok starts cracking down and saying, like, oh, this is BS, or hey, content warning, some of the stuff in this may not be true, like Twitter and some other places are doing, I think the fight is just going to have to be up to us content makers that post stuff on there, and people who watch this show, honestly. Like, that's gonna be it, because I mean, slick production values is just controlling everything these days.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah. It's the the shiny lights and buttons kind of, can catch your eye, so to speak, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And folks, I want to remind you guys, this is a live call-in show. We have some open lines right now. We're going to get to some of your calls, but we need some more calls first. We got to get your calls so we can talk to you guys, because that's what we do here every single week. So what are some of the conversations you've had on Axioms on Trial that like made you really think? Because like I know you've been doing this stuff for a while, like you've been talking about this for a little bit before you were doing this channel. So like, was there stuff that was harder for you to deconstruct more than others, or is it all just kind of like, oh, I've kind of done this before?
That's a great question. So I would say I got really tripped up in certain philosophical arguments where the lexicon of the jargon kind of in itself is confusing. So I relate that to like, if you're going to learn about evolution or these things, like you're going to find yourself going, well, what's a nucleotide, right? Yeah. What's adenine? What's cytosine, right? You're not even going to get through the full sentence because you're just kind of defining these words. And so I think it's not like when someone is presented the modal ontological argument or these other various kind of armchair theist arguments, it's not that I would think I was mistaken at one point. It was like, hey, maybe there's something here, until I see what's being used with language and how language is kind of being misused. So I wouldn't say that there's anything that's, at least on the theist side, that's pushed me. I think if anything, I've become more of a Gnostic atheist, especially towards like Christianity or Islam or anything like that. But I would say perhaps just the kind of understanding and feeling intimidated by the theist philosophers before you kind of get into that, you can kind of be put off by certain people that use certain things, or the necessity contingency type of arguments where we don't even know if in a level of causation or physics, if we're even going off the right sense of causation, or if we should even say, the principle of sufficient reason is valid, or these types of things. So I think that's where it gets tough for me, right? Because we're doing a lot of a priori deduction and things that I don't see how we're actually showing it's the case. And so those have been challenging for me. It's kind of like, it's always going to fall down to, well, your epistemology doesn't accept that, right? And my epistemology does. And it's like, well, then now we got to kind of zoom out and look at each other's epistemology. And
you can't have logic without God, those kinds of things, or the universe is a series of causes, and God has to be the first cause because blah blah blah. Like versions of that. They wouldn't use the wording that I'm using, but you're right. It's how they dress it up. They make it sound very respectable and very intellectual, and I can see how some of that stuff can be convincing until you read some of the skeptical arguments to that, especially like from people who actually have philosophy degrees, right, that have looked at this stuff, because some of this stuff really isn't as new. It's just kind of been repurposed or remade for different audiences and stuff like that. So but if you're not looking for kind of the skeptical responses, then you can just kind of leave it at that. But I really do struggle to find people besides the every once in a while, like Christians who actually use a lot of those really meticulous philosophical arguments, because 99% of the people, like the only time I've ever heard a lot of this philosophical stuff is when I'm doing like this show. I'm not hearing it in real life. I'm not hearing it from my Christian friends. I'm not hearing it from, my life experiences never really told me this, besides the occasional apologists and stuff that I met when I was a Christian. But like, most people aren't using this to justify their beliefs anyway. And
most people aren't coming to the conclusion on those beliefs too, right? And so, and I don't want to say it's ad hoc or post hoc necessarily, but it does seem kind of, I think you do need to look at it the light is that, did the modal ontological argument really convince you that a God exists?
Yeah.
Because I'm willing to bet it probably didn't. And that might be a fault on my end to assume that. But I've talked to a lot of people and I've never had someone go, hey, I started believing God because of the modal ontological argument. It more so seems to be these kind of post hoc rationalizations where you can manipulate and use language. And I think Matt Dillahunty said it the best. I think it was him who said, language is our bitch. We can do whatever we want with it. And so, and I think that's very true with philosophy. And I see like someone like him recognizes that. And I think he's a great example because he knows the philosophy, but will talk in words in ways that the whole audience is going to understand. And I think that's the difference between the theist and the philosophy is you get lost in this kind of word salad that not everyone's going to understand, even if you are making a good point. So,
and, I've read the Bible, Jmike. I don't remember Jesus ever using the ontological argument. I don't remember that happening, or really any of these arguments.
I'm not convinced that's the case either.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he did the miracles and stuff. That might have been more convincing, but we don't have that, so I don't know. It is what it is. But maybe, do you think you have a miracle, or maybe you have a good argument you can call into this show? This is Truth Wanted. We're live and we're ready to go, and I think we're ready to take some calls. If you are, Jmike,
I'm always ready.
Cool. Well, before we do that, first we have to give a special shout out to our awesome patron of the week. Every single week, we pick somebody from our patrons to shout out and give a special thank you to. And this week, I want to give a special shout out to Neil, the 604 Atheist. Hey, I know that guy. He's pretty cool, I guess. Neil, the 604 Atheist, you're awesome. Thank you so much for donating. And if you would like to donate to this show, there's a couple different ways you can do that. The first one is going to be patreon.com/truthwanted. And those of you who are watching this show live, you may have noticed a little bit of a change. We're not doing super chats anymore. If you look at the top above your chat screen there, you can actually donate directly to the ACA. The reason why we're doing that is whenever you do a super chat, some of that money goes to YouTube, and instead none of that has to go to YouTube. So if you're not too big on YouTube and you don't want to give them your money, you don't have to. You can just do it straight for the ACA. So go ahead and click that donate now button at the top if you're interested in doing that. It helps pay for like this equipment and stuff and a bunch of other stuff that we have to upkeep here for the ACA. So thank you guys so much who donate. And now I think we can get to some calls. So let's go ahead and do it. First, we got somebody who's been waiting for a bit. This is John calling in from the USA who wants specifically to talk to you, Jmike. So John, what's going on?
Not much. I'm one of those Christian apologists, one of those word salad extraordinaires, word salad chefs, I should say. I'm friends with Mike, and we actually started this conversation a little bit before. So, what would be your guys' basic objections to libertarian free will or free will in general? And if free will is true, do you think that would lend probability to God's existence? So, sort of like a compound question there.
Sure. Okay, Jmike, I know. You know our friend John here, so I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I was on John's show not that long ago. He does he does some good stuff, and that's the good thing about TikTok is I met John through there, and I've met all these people through here. So that's another reason why people should get in that and expand the community. But yeah, so I don't think that in any aspect, if I can answer the second part of that, is going to lend necessarily credit to God. I think it maybe could, depending on where we go from there. But what I would say is if we look at at T1 or T equals 1, Mike chooses A or B. And then at T equals 2, Mike has chosen A. So from a libertarian free will standpoint, we go back to T1 and you have that same A or B predicament. Well, you're going to probably say that I could have chose otherwise. I'm going to say that everything is the same. I didn't pick my neurons, how they fire. I didn't pick my parents. I didn't pick my brain. I didn't get to go out to the store and shop for the specific neurons that fire specific ways. Nothing that I did that would still be present at T1 is going to change. So it is determined in every aspect for me to still make the decision A at T2.
Okay. Yeah. And I guess I'll talk about mine because, again, you had two questions there. The first one, what's the objections to a libertarian free will? Libertarian free will just conceptually just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So I know, for example, if you cut the corpus callosum in my brain, I'm going to react differently. If you ask me something when I just wake up in the morning, whether I want to do something or not, I'm going to act differently than something else. And that's because you're affecting physical things about my body because I'm a physical being. And so I think being a physical being means I'm a part of the physical systems that exist in the world. And so if you change variables of that physical system, then you're going to be able to change my decisions on things. And that just doesn't make sense on this like libertarian idea of free will, especially if you're incorporating some idea of a soul or something, because it seems that all of my choices are based on something physical happening, something that could be changed on a either chemical or some other, smaller molecular kind of level. And if that's the case, then what does free will even mean in that context? It becomes kind of just a made up thing at some point for me. I don't understand how it could work. And as to the second question, whether or not it would be evidence for a God, I don't know that free will would be evidence for a God, or at least the Christian God. There seems to be people who believe in God, a Christian God, that don't think that there's free will. And so that doesn't seem to be necessarily incompatible with, depending on your kind of Christianity, whether it's for a God in general. Again, like there could be a God that just made us, that gave us to have free will and didn't. So I don't know. I don't know what the difference would be there in terms of proving the existence of God. So there you go, John.
Yeah. So let's see. I'll respond to Mike first. So concerning Matt Dillahunty's analogy of the top, I call it Matt Dillahunty's time machine. If I could go back to T1, could I do otherwise? And as Tim Stratton notes, there's two components to libertarian free will. Sourcehood, which would say that I am the originator of my actions that I chose, that nothing outside of me determined that, as you were objecting because, you're a physicalist in some sense, I'd assume. Yeah, I'm correct about that, Daniel.
Oh.
Well, Mike, are you a property dualist or just straight physicalist?
No, I'm a reductive physicalist.
Okay. And I would just simply say principle of alternative possibilities, being able to do otherwise, is not necessary for libertarian free will. I still defend that, so we could talk about that as well. But I would just say in that example, as long as nothing causally determined me to do that and I deliberated freely to do that, then I would say that was still free action, even if I couldn't have done otherwise. So that'd be the first thing I said. Okay.
Well, real quick, so would you be making a distinction there between like agent causation and event causation? Like saying that they're separate?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the problem I would have. I would say that if you think about that, like, and for those that aren't familiar with like agent causation, event causation, the agent causation, essentially, they're going to say that those kind of thoughts are going to arise there. But I think that kind of fails in the water, though, because there's still like what you're saying in agent causation as the thought or I'm going to do this is still determined by the set of neurons or your biology, right? Like we can just show this example that I'm not you and you're not me. We're not going to have those same decisions based on those determining factors. And so I don't see how you get out of that with agent causation when every different kind of agent alongside event causation kind of, to me, throws that to the wayside.
So just for clarification, you're not giving us sort of logical incoherence of agent causation. You're just sort of arguing, well, you're still arguing like strict physicalism.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Yeah, I just claim that my thoughts are not equivalent to my brain, and there's duality there, whether you defend hylomorphic dualism and substance dualism. I'm not a neurologist, neither are you guys, but I know there are neurologists who have won the Nobel Peace Prize. There's a quote from one that J.P. Moreland always uses, who believes in the soul, interestingly enough. So that's quite the debate for them. I just have to hear the arguments for physicalism instead of, just the assertion. Well, of course, it's a call-in show. We're not good.
Well, I think the soul is an assertion. I don't doubt that there's incredibly intelligent people that believe that there is a soul, but I've never seen it demonstrated in a scientific paper. I mean, like, that's what it's going to have to come down to at the end of the day. It doesn't matter that, these scientists believe that thing, right?
I don't think the metaphysics of physicalism are demonstrated in scientific papers either. I think scientific findings are. I think
that's the problem I kind of have with this. I think Dan's raising a good point. But even if we get there, like even if we go with like Dan's hypothetical and we get to kind of testing these things, I don't see that we have a falsification criterion for these types of ideas. And how are you going to falsify this immaterial soul? Like, how do you do that?
How do we demonstrate a human that doesn't have a soul, for example? How do we distinguish that?
Yeah, it seems that, and I don't want to, and I respect
a human who doesn't have a soul.
Well, so my thing is that it seems that, like, if we're going to say, especially if we get into the soul thing, because I don't see any way that we're going to falsify this in an honest test for science. And someone could argue, well, that's not the only way we come to truth. Well, you're going to have to then present that methodology, because as far as I'm concerned, we have the a priori and a posteriori kind of concepts here. But if beyond that, it's like, if we're going to falsify it, or let's just say we're doing this study and we're going to try to find ways to falsify it, like, it sounds like all we're doing whenever we throw those away is, it seems that these types of immaterial claims or God claims or all these kind of things that are lumped in here don't want to go through the rigorous process that science has to offer to do things. It almost sounds like it kind of wants to sidestep it. And that's where I get off board, because at the beginning of the show, I'm saying if it shouldn't have a problem with investigation, and this is one of the most reliable ways. I'm not saying it's not an empiricist, not advocating for scientism, but this is a very good way to at least come to some distinction of maybe a fallibilistic assessment of knowledge, right? So why would we not apply that? Or would you? I don't want to straw man.
I go with the classical William Lane Craig, how he answers these types of objections with methodology. So I just say you'd have to have some sort of deductive argument with premises, conclusions, and then science can be used to defend premises, but the science itself doesn't necessarily, I don't think the science itself are equivalent to those conclusions, because people make those conclusions and people can be wrong about their conclusions.
Yeah, so but would that not be that wouldn't really be a problem for a fallibilistic, like, so science is pretty much under this fallible assessment, right? And that's kind of I think my grounding too. I don't have a problem with induction or any of these things, because I'm never claiming Cartesian certainty. The only way I'll get into certainty is maybe into, like, if we get into like epistemic solipsism or something like that, but that's a different conversation.
Sure. Yeah, so I think you could falsify the soul if you came up with a better explanation for thoughts independent of the brain and so on, that duality that we have there. Or if you make sort of like an inductive argument against soul using...
Why do we have to make arguments to demonstrate it, though? Like, why can't we observe it? Is the soul not something that we can observe?
Well, interestingly enough, Gary Habermas, he's written a book on near-death experiences, and while you can't obviously directly observe near-death experiences, they're well medically journaled and so on. I wouldn't use that as evidence for Christianity. I'd use that as maybe evidence for to falsify naturalism, if you have to redefine naturalism to fit near-death experiences into that worldview.
I guess, but
so
like
that's one.
But near-death experiences aren't souls, right? Like, how do we demonstrate the soul? Because could we conceivably have a near-death experience and not have souls? So, like, what makes the soul, more reasonable to believe than to not?
Yeah, do we have like a novel testable prediction or something we could get out of it and kind of say, hey, this theory is more credible because it produces this prediction, or like, what can we do?
I mean, it's not a question I've thought about when it comes to predictions in the soul. I'd maybe say there's better abduction reasoning with the soul and inductive reasoning. But so Descartes, I think, therefore I am, you agree with that, Mike, right? Because we had this conversation last night. I think that proves that you can have real mental deliberations, and that's just intuitively true. And like to deny that and to argue, well, it's really just neurons going on. I think that's a premise you have to defend first.
Yeah, but that's not what I'm saying, right? Like, what makes the statement, what makes our ability to say, I think, therefore I am, mean that we have a soul?
Well, is there really mental causation, or is it just the brain, the physical brain parts? Like, is there really a substance of thoughts? I think part of the soul would be that substance of thoughts, substance of mentality.
Wait, so does that mean like gorillas and chimpanzees have souls? Because I mean, they can communicate through sign. Like Coco did sign language with humans. So like,
sure. Yeah, no, I would think humans have souls. I mean, I have a goal.
No, I'm asking like other species outside of humans. Does that mean they have souls?
Yeah, I'd say so. They have consciousness.
Oh.
I'm also a hylomorphic dualist, not a substance dualist, so they would explain it a little bit differently, but that's a bunch of philosophical jargon that.
But is consciousness
may
the
not
same
be interested in.
I agree that they have consciousness, but is consciousness the same as a soul, though?
It's part of the soul, I'd say.
Okay, so
Now,
we have
whether-
some physical explanation for a soul, then, right? Because like we can recognize what makes something conscious through physical parts. Like, you do agree that we can't be conscious without physical things happening, right?
Well, and this, as a hylomorphic dualist, I say that humans need both body and this thing we call the soul that contains consciousness, the mind, in order to be fully human and to have that proper functioning. Because, you got the interaction problem where, you got damaged brain parts and obviously you interact differently. I'd say, yeah, the soul that is meant for this body that has to make this rational structure, if I'm explaining hylomorphic dualism correctly, which I think I am, that has to be proper or it just won't work.
Would you agree though you need some kind of like simpler explanation, and like you would agree like in terms of like a simpler explanation towards something that we can produce like a prediction off of would be more viable, right? Because it sounds like you're adding something that all of this can be explained by natural and physical processes. I mean, sure, I will grant you the hard problem of consciousness. We haven't gotten to the root of this. This is still, one of those topics I love to talk about, but I don't see where the introduction of like the immaterial. I don't see where the introduction of the immaterial all of a sudden explains something that the physical isn't explaining, and demonstrating that it's explaining.
Yeah, I also don't come from the physical aspect, so you guys have the hard problem of consciousness. I don't.
Well, no, I would say that's not fair. I would say that everybody is going to have this problem until we kind of root it in, whether it's your position of the mental or my position of the physical. This is kind of similar to like the natural, like me being a naturalist, right? Naturalism best explains everything. I'm not saying it is the de facto everything's natural, right? I'm also a methodological naturalist, so I'm not like denying any of these metaphysical or philosophical naturalist position or claiming that position. But what I would be saying is I'm
a methodological naturalist too. So
well, so then you could kind of get on board with me here and like walk with me here. Is that
in science inquiry, but the soul would be quite the metaphysical claim, not the science claim.
Yeah, but again, these things, when I say like they're best explained by physical processes, is because we only have these physical processes which to go by off of. Like, it's like kind of the resurrection thing when it's like, this is the most, I'm going to use an abductive argument to say that it's most likely that Jesus resurrected. Well, it's not though, because we don't actually have any data point to reference, right? If I took you to like an Excel spreadsheet and we're going to list out on one side, like, natural explanations for this, and then on the other side we're going to appeal to supernatural or immaterial things, the side for the immaterial is going to have nothing on it. Like, we don't even have any data point to reference, whereas like even if this might be the most outlandish physical or natural explanation, by default it's going to have more explanatory property because that's what we've rooted this in. Not to exclude that, and not to take the metaphysical or the supernatural card off the table, so to speak. But I've never seen my need in my epistemology or methodology to ever have to use that or lift that card up to explain anything that the set of physical explanations couldn't just explain through testable predictions.
Hey, John, we have to get to some other callers here. We got some people waiting on the line, but I want to give you a chance to give. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, I appreciate you taking my call. We really got off free will there. I wasn't even ready to talk about it. I was listening to it.
Yeah, we did, didn't we?
Free will. I guess I would say that if one is a metaphysical naturalist, then of course it's really hard to see evidence for the soul and for God, but that's a whole nother topic. So I guess that's what I'll end with.
Okay. Well, thanks so much.
I appreciate you taking my call.
Yeah, John, thank you for calling in, man.
I do appreciate it. And interesting conversation. But I do think it's funny, and I don't want to continue the conversation when John's not here because that's not fair. But like to say that it's harder when we talk about the soul and we talk about God, but it's like, but why? It's like, I think you and I share the same kind of feeling, Jmike, where it's like, if we have a physical explanation for stuff, the soul just kind of becomes an extra thing. Now, I'll give John some credit here. He is the first Christian I've ever talked to that said gorillas have souls. That's a new one for me.
John's awesome.
That's pretty cool.
John's awesome. Cool. I love talking
I didn't expect that. I never heard that before. I was like, oh, okay. Well, this is a new argument then if we're including that.
Yeah, he's awesome.
But
he runs a JMD Apologetics 101, and it's a good channel. Really, it is.
Hey, props to that. If you include that objection into your worldview, like, okay, like you're at least accepting some observations there that other people, when I bring that up, like they have a lot of trouble, like kind of getting to, because it's hard when you really study these other animals and you can just see how close they are to our capacities of cognition. And sometimes the only difference really is just the language and obviously some other things, but like just to see how close they are, it does make you think, well, if they can do all of this, and classically speaking, they don't have souls, right? That's not John's position, but a lot of Christians think. Then, like, what does that mean about us? What is the real difference between us and these other animals? And that's a fascinating thing altogether. But we got a lot of other people that want to talk to us, Jmike. So let's go ahead and get to another call here. I want to talk to Sven, who's calling in from Washington. Hey, Sven, you're live on Truth Wanted. What's going on?
I am well. How are you?
Doing awesome. What can we talk to you about?
Yeah, so I just was thinking lately about how atheism and I guess more definitively skepticism would lead to conformity and the way that like religious doctrine does. Do you think it like limits free thought or free thinkers because you want to follow kind of like the follow-up of the last caller, empiricism only as the only way of truth?
Yeah, but you did hear that I granted a priori knowledge or any types of conceptual knowledge, though, right? So it's not empiricism.
I did.
Yeah, so that wouldn't be empiricism.
So you do believe it?
What's that, Sven?
Dan, would you agree? Do you not think that? Dan, would you agree? Do you think that skepticism wouldn't lead to a limiting free thought and free thinkers because it only follows one path? Or
there's different types of skepticism and there's different types of atheism. So it's hard to say. I think, colloquially, when people are talking about this, they'd be like, oh, atheists can get together and just be just as wrong about something as anybody else, which I think, yes, that's true. I don't doubt that a Facebook group of atheists can all be really critical about something and not fully understand a situation, because there is kind of a culture that develops when you're with a group of people for so long that if you have a disdain for one topic, then suddenly everybody else has a disdain for it. And, like those kind of cultural memes do happen. And we see it in the atheist community. I mean, I'm on Twitter. I see this stuff happen. And I happen to disagree with a lot of my fellow atheists on a lot of things. And so I know that like anybody, if they're a part of a group, can find themselves agreeing to stuff just because the group is agreeing to it, and maybe not because they're using their own skepticism. That's going to be true for any group. But I'd like to think that, those of us who do identify as atheists, I'd like to think that we'd have a propensity to be more skeptical, to be more open-minded. I know that's not true. I know that we're just as susceptible, but I like to think we at least talk about these methodologies more and talk about how we're coming to these conclusions more. I think that's true, at least for the groups that I hang out with. So even if I think, oh, these people aren't being skeptical about it at all, I can at least talk to somebody about it, and I think they're going to be more receptive to it than, say, if I'm going to talk to a Christian and say, hey, I'm not sure about this whole Christianity thing. So yeah, I don't know. I see where you're coming from, but at the end of the day, yeah, I think that I think we're okay as long as we continue to grow and evolve. I mean, look at the atheist community 10 years ago versus now, just like online and in general. I think they're just a lot more open and a lot more just chill with stuff, especially as new political ideologies form, new understandings of the world happen, and the world changes. I don't know, the atheist label changes along with it, I guess.
Yeah, I guess definitely in the political landscape, you could see a diversity in thought. I guess I've called in before about the soul, and we talked for a while. I just think, the other day it was shocking to hear that Matt Dillahunty said he didn't really know about a lot about panpsychism. And it's just like I've also heard like that the soul is the most dead topic in philosophy today, but when I listen to philosophies around the world from England, I guess just England here, but yeah, there's a lot of thought and a lot of talk in philosophy about the immaterial and, you know, the supernatural, and there's just a lot of thought out there, and I feel like skepticism just wants to shut a lot of that out when, I just don't feel like it's a dead topic that there's a consciousness and a soul.
Well, so, and I think that's like when I'm talking to John, we say like a methodological naturalist, and Matt would, I think, agree to that term. I think you've heard him use it. That is right there is an admission that we're not saying that the supernatural doesn't exist. We're not the example I use is like we have a deck of cards and all the cards are natural, and then we have the one kind of supernatural. We're going to use that to explain something. It's going to remain on the table. We're not going to take it off. So that doesn't get you there. But when I want to make sure I heard you right at the beginning, you were saying like the skepticism kind of gives you this level of doctrine that religion has, but dogma tells you that it is the case and that you should not, apply any other type of reasoning to it. You shouldn't be skeptical of it. So you're talking about two different ends of the stick, from my perspective, at least.
Yeah, it's funny you say reasoning and rationality because I feel like they are the exact opposite. And so it's like I feel like there's a lot of people who go from religion to spiritual and not to atheism because I feel like there is a lot of gray area in the consciousness and the soul topic. I don't think it's...
I can tell you my hypothesis on why that's the case.
Sometimes atheism feel like empiricism is... So they want an empirical evidence of the soul. Like you're asking, like, where do we measure it? But like, it's not a material thing. So it's not... You obviously can't get to it to empirical means.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I get that, but that's why we have kind of deduction and these types of things that aren't necessarily, the philosophical armchair, so to speak. Like we can reason that way. This is why this is kind of not. You don't see like strict empiricists anymore. It's why it's not. That's not what this is. We've kind of taken that rationality and empiricism, and we've realized within there that you can deduct, and that's not a problem. Yeah. I just would say the reason that I think my hypothesis or my conjecture, at least on that, is that people are just very emotionally attached and not attached to like, so for example, I'm a determinist. I want free will to be true. Like more than anything, I want to know I author like actions, right? But I take my emotions out of these decisions because I know the universe, or at least it seems to indicate through my experience that the universe does not care about me. It has been doing its thing long before I came along. So anything that I conjecture or I want to think or this wishful thinking, it does not care about how I feel. And the best way for me to live my life is to recognize that and understand, well, if the world's deterministic, it's deterministic. If there's no soul, there's no soul. That to me doesn't make life any less beautiful. In fact, I think it actually, the more we kind of constrain ourselves, I think it's more beautiful. The more finite time I have, the more I'm going to want to spend it with my family and friends and things of that nature, right? So I think I don't know, I like the position better than being open for these things where now you can just be tricked by anybody, I feel like.
Well, I would say this, I agree. If there is a soul and it's immaterial and it's outside of, the empirical realm, then all we could do is just reason about it. But like reason alone still doesn't conclude to me that a soul exists. Like a reason without any kind of evidence or any kind of observation is almost meaningless in that sense, because especially in this case, because again, the soul is hypothetically speaking still interacting with the physical world. It's still having to do things. And so like if we can observe that, if that's something that's happening, again, like if I have a soul and a rock doesn't, there is something different between me and that rock. And whether it's material or not, it's there's a difference. It's like that's still an observation. Like even if I don't like see the spirit molecule that's in me and not in the rock or whatever it is, you know what I'm saying? Like pure reason still doesn't get you there. And I we don't talk about this enough, I think, in the atheist community about what happens to people who do deconstruct from fundamentalism and then just go to a more liberal Christianity, because that is just as common as people becoming atheists, if not more so. I think I mean, if you don't believe me, just check out all the YouTube videos about it, all the podcasts about people who still identify as Christians, but still come to this more kind of liberal, kind of open interpretation. Like we don't talk about that a lot because like we don't get to those conclusions, obviously, but that's happening. That's definitely happening. I guess just atheists, we just kind of, I don't know, we just didn't get there, or we went past it, I guess. Anyway, I hope we answered your questions to your liking there, Sven. We're going to go ahead and get to another caller here, but thanks for calling in. And appreciate you talking to us.
I think you make a good point there, by the way, Dan. It's like, look at a photon, right? We don't, there's a lot of things that you'd be like, someone could armchair deduce, well, what if there's a photon in this thing, right?
Yeah.
Well, how are we proving that? Well, it's a thing that you're saying is in the physical world. And so we can actually show this, right? And so that's where I feel like earlier the other call, it seems like we're just trying to sidestep the rigorous testing of science. And you can use the a priori kind of to get there, right? But you're going to have something there that's going to make it tangible. Otherwise, I feel like you can just believe really anything.
Yes, and that's with the caveat, by the way. I understand math is kind of a weird thing because is that just like pure reason? But like the mathematical models we use still only make sense when we're doing observations. When I say 1 + 1 = 2, that says nothing about the physical world. But if I say there's one table and there's another table, and that means there's two tables, I'm making a conclusion about the physical world based on my observations using math, which is like a kind of reasoning. So like, there's going to be those technical caveats there, but hopefully I think people understand what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, 100%
talking about this. So let's go ahead and go to another caller. Then we're still talking about naturalists here, which is interesting. This is Seif calling in from the USA. Seif, you're live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Hey guys, I'm actually Mike's co-host. I was calling in to show my support and to say hi to everyone.
Oh, heck yeah! Hey, bud.
Hey, what's going on?
Good.
Good to hear from you.
Hey, you too.
Yeah, man. I also wanted to give my 2 cents on this conversation about consciousness and the soul. Is that this is an invasion by religious people when they say, well, it's a category error to ask for empirical evidence of the soul because the soul is immaterial. Well, the problem with that is that this type of metaphysics are purely speculative, and we have no epistemology to show that these assumptions are any more than just assumptions. We don't have a way to show that they're not just imaginary and that there's actually something concrete there going on. And I think one reason why physicalism is usually attacked is based on a paper by Nagel called "What's It Like to Be a Bat," where he rightfully shows how there's no sort of mechanistic description of the bat itself that can give us any understanding of what its subjective experience is like.
Correct.
And therefore, there seems to be something that the physical description isn't capturing. But that, to me, is an issue of epistemology, not ontology. It doesn't undermine the potential ontology of physicalism. It just says that we are limited in the language that we use to talk about these things. And so I think people come out of it confused and with the wrong conclusion based on the right observation. And there's a lot of people, like, I think, we did a video recently where we tackle this idea of even science suggesting that consciousness is immaterial, and I think Inspiring Philosophy is the channel that we went over, and we actually had my brother on, who's a physicist, and we went over the type of arguments that people use when they're making that claim, and sort of debunked that perspective. And I think it's important for people to really educate themselves on these difficult topics, to sort of not be misled by misinformation.
Yes, I think a good thing to point out with this too is, like, I've heard this before where they're like, oh, if everybody was blind and there was one person that could see, you wouldn't say that person couldn't actually see just because everybody else is blind. But actually, like, we can still describe the physical processes by which that person is seeing, and we could like describe to the detail his relationship to his eyes, to the photons coming into it, to everything bouncing off in the natural world. Like, we can still make those observations of the physical world happening. And that's my whole thing with the soul, right? Is like, again, like, you can't say that the soul exists and does something in the physical world without describing a relationship of what's actually happening there. And it can't just be this extra metaphysical thing. It just doesn't make sense.
And the gap between the thing itself and the language we use to describe the thing itself, that gap isn't a problem for physicalism. Mm-hmm. we can just acknowledge it for what it is. We can be aware of our epistemic and subjective limitations without having to then assume that there has to be some other substance. That you're only complicating the matter by adding.
Say the same thing about chakras.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah.
I was literally just like, this sounds like wheel chakras in my throat.
Yeah. And it's how people just get away with this bullshit. It's just these this metaphysical arguments that don't relate. But go ahead, Steve.
The one question I did have for Mike, which I don't think I've asked you this personally yet, is do you have a favorite show that we've done so far? Like, what has been the show you've enjoyed the most?
I don't know. I would say probably the one with your brother, since he's like a quantum physics educator. That's always really fun to sit back and just listen. You know what I mean? So, probably I would say the ones where I get to shut my mouth and just listen. The less I embarrass myself, I guess.
No, you're doing fine. No, I enjoy the ones with him as well. I think they're the most personal and enjoyable for me. So.
Well, hey, Steve, we're going to get to those plugs at the end of the show here, okay? But thanks for calling in.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your question. It's a good point to make about the fallacies that come up when we do talk about this, because it gets really technical really fast if you don't know what's going on. And this is another situation where people can really pull a fast one on you here and say, oh, your belief is not justified because you have to demonstrate this. And it really is just a thing of like, no, actually, like this, you're making this, if you're saying anything about the metaphysical, if you're saying anything about the possibilities, like that's the assertion being made there. And that's what has to be demonstrated. It's not that because we have a naturalist worldview that we are completely barred from, understanding anything about it. It's like you just have to demonstrate a system by how we could know anyway, because if you say that you know it, then you have to know it somehow. Where does this idea of a soul come from? If it wasn't observed, how do we know that it's a thing? Mm-hmm. So that's all I say about that. But we got some more calls here, so let's go ahead and keep going because we want to get to everybody. We still got 5 more people on the line. I'm going to see if we can get to the next 5 people here in the last 30 minutes of the show. So keep on the call if you want to get talked to. Next person we're talking to is Edward, calling in from Canada. Edward, what's going on?
Hi, how are you? How are
good.
you doing,
awesome.
guys?
Doing good. Thanks for asking. What's going on?
I think this is my first time calling in the show.
Cool.
I don't know, actually. Yeah. I guess I was randomly reminded. I was just sitting, and somebody just sent me a link and said, you should just go in there and maybe talk with the guys. And I said, why not? I mean, I was just writing my assignment, I guess. But yeah, I have a question, I guess, to you guys. And this is a question I ask to people. And this question basically pertains to general problems that I think you have, which is, I want to ask you, how do you know that God isn't deceiving you to make you believe that he doesn't exist?
How do I? Well, so I would say that you would have you could have an infinite amount of those types of ideas, right? I could imagine we go Descartes' demon. I could be tricked by all sorts of different things. So to answer your question of how do I know it's not that? Well, I don't know. I wouldn't know, but I can come to a fallibilistic understanding that that doesn't seem to be the case, and it would have to present itself, right? So it's kind of like the Matrix thing. If you're gonna posit that as an idea, you're gonna have to at least show me a way out. Otherwise, I am stuck with the confines of where I'm at. And I'm not denying that's the case. I'm just saying that that doesn't appear to be the case, the same way it doesn't appear to be the case that ice cream is deceiving me, the same way it doesn't appear to be there's this giant flying spaghetti monster that's deceiving me, right? Like we could just keep doing this over and over again.
Okay, but forever. What makes the idea that God isn't deceiving you more likely than the idea that he is?
Because there's no demonstration of that at all by any means.
What demonstration is there that he isn't deceiving you?
The fact that I would say it's not that it's clear cut, right? This is kind of goes back to the fallibilistic thing. It could be that case. This is to say that could be in a matrix. All these things could be true. That's not presented in my worldview, so I don't have to live my worldview that way.
Yeah,
I don't have to live off hypotheticals. You know what I mean?
Right.
It just seems like you're trying to do a trap that's doesn't make sense, because you're just saying, how do you know it couldn't be infinity or an infinite amount of these other things? Well, sure, it could be. I'm not interested in those. Demonstrate that's a candidate explanation, and I'll give it some thought. Otherwise, it just sounds like it's in your head.
Yeah.
So
I'm asking, what way do you have to demonstrate that one scenario is more likely than the other?
What methodology? Sorry, Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like Neo didn't know that he was in the Matrix until he saw things that were contrary to what was normal to his reality, right? Like like something had to happen there for his observations to like kind of put together that what he saw wasn't real. Otherwise, he would have kept living in the Matrix and he wouldn't have known the difference. And so that's going to be the same with the rest of us. Like, if we're all just in the Matrix and God is just deceiving us, we're not going to know the difference either. There's no way. But for us to know that that's not the case, we'd have to have evidence to the contrary, and we don't. So that's why we're not saying, yes, this absolutely isn't the case, but we also don't see the opposite evidence either. Like, there's no one saying, like Mike was saying, that the flying spaghetti monster is deceiving us is more reasonable than marshmallow is deceiving us. It's just,
you're literally just like, this is the whole idea of my epistemology, right? You're just saying something that, as far as I can tell, is imaginary and in your head. And unless you can show me that that's actually reflective in any way, I don't care. I just don't. It's not, it's like, that's not how you view things. You don't go like, what if this, if you have the what if, well, then we can create a testable prediction out of it, or we should be able to falsify it in some way, or be able to a priori deduct that that's not the case, or whatever. But as far as that you're in the same problem that Descartes wrote about, the Descartes' demon, and that we don't know if all of our memories are intact within 5 minutes ago. I mean, this is like, it feels like you think you're doing something that has already been done in philosophy for hundreds of years.
Just a second. First of all, I'm not under the same problem because I'm not a content internalist, right? So please don't project that onto me. Now, but the second problem is that you, in the first sentence, concede global skepticism and then make knowledge claims. So I'm asking you, how is knowledge compatible with global skeptical worldview? You don't seem to understand this concept.
You don't seem to understand what it means to have fallibilistic knowledge. Do you know what a fallibilist is?
It's not fallibilism has nothing to do with global skepticism. Global skepticism.
No, it's when did I wait, hold on. Let's take this one at a time. So I'm saying if I have knowledge and I'm saying it's fallible, what does that mean to you?
Well, to me, that means that fallibilistic knowledge gives some sort of probability while admitting that knowledge can be contextual in certain cases. So, for example, fallibilism admits that there is a certain chance that sun might not come up tomorrow, but we're still justified to believe it will come due to it having a higher probability of coming. That's the basic idea of fallibilism. However, when you concede global skepticism, all of those probabilities are also consistent with the other hypothetical, and you're not doing anything. Just a second, right? Just a second.
I'm actually gonna stop you, because you went into global skepticism, right? If you actually knew my position, and your voice sounds very familiar. I've had this conversation with you, I think, like 10 times on Discord. And I'll say it for you again, is that as from an epistemic solipsist point, right? Like, I know I exist. So I'm certain about that. So you can't even apply this global skepticism, because I'm starting from the axiom that I know that I exist. So that's where you're just talking right over my head. You don't even understand my position. So
there you go.
It just doesn't, like, I've tried to explain this to you like 10 times on Discord, but it just seems like you want to go through the same tennis bag.
I'll give you one last chance to respond here, Edward. Then we're going to go ahead and go to another caller.
It's like very basic philosophy. It's kind of embarrassing.
Okay, just a second. Do you understand that global skepticism is compatible with you knowing that you exist?
When you're referencing global skepticism, are you saying that I would be skeptical that I exist?
No, you wouldn't be skeptical that you
Well, then that if you're using that term in that way, then yeah, it would be compatible for me to say I'm skeptic, but I'm certain that I exist. I mean, that's my position, so there's not a problem there. But when you use the word global skepticism, you're either going to have to define it, what you mean, because the way that I look at it, that entails my epistemic solipsist of not being certain about that. But that's literally what my foundation is saying, is that I am certain about that.
Okay, good. So now I want to ask you, how do you make any knowledge judgments about it being more likely that God isn't deceiving you than it being more likely that he is? How do you know which one's more probable?
Okay, so it's not demonstrated. So there is a data set of 0 for me to be able to even to say that would be the case. Like just like the infinite amount of other things, like ice cream is deceiving me. So there's no basis at all for me to believe that is true. We're not even talking probable over one over the other. Like I'm experiencing the beyond that aspect. Like how are you going to say? I would have to literally list infinite amount of things that it could be, and then give a probabilistic assessment. That doesn't make any sense from my position.
Yeah,
like, it seems like I could just come up with anything. The Mortal Kombat arcade cabinet to me really. How do I know that this didn't create life? How do you know that I'm not God? Like these questions are just stupid to me. It's like doesn't seem like you actually want to have an intellectual conversation. You just want to say you don't know anything, and that's literally I'm a fallibilist, so I'm okay with knowledge being fallible. So
yeah. We're going to go ahead and go to another caller here. Thanks for calling in and talking to us about this stuff. But yeah, I agree. It does become a bit tiresome because, look, like, yeah, I don't personally, I don't even know if I want to assign a probability of like, oh, is it more likely that I'm being deceived or not? I guess I agree to some extent like that. I can't make that distinction. But what I do see, like, what I do know is I'm experiencing things, right? Like I can at least see that, and that is like kind of the data set you're talking about. I'm, witnessing these cause and effect of relationships, and yeah, maybe there's something else to it, but
it's just the Matrix argument. It's all it is, just put into his very specific ideology. And so that's what's like, what's the probability that yours is actually the one that's deceiving me if we're going to throw that as a hypothesis? It's like, you're just giving me a nonsensical imaginary hypothesis. I don't care about your hypothesis if you can't demonstrate it to be true, because just like anything else that I might not know that's imaginary, or that someone's going to just give me conjecture that is the case, I need a mechanism to determine how that is the case. And if you're going to just say it is, and I can rival with a million other things, I don't see the productivity there.
And that could be predictive power is one way to measure that. Like I see the sun moving up every day, and I can predict at exactly what time that's going to happen again tomorrow. So like I don't even have to say that that's real in some physical or metaphysical sense. I can just describe the relationship, period. I don't even have to go as far as to say like, oh, this is all that exists, or there's not angels moving the sun or whatever. Like I can just see the sun moving. Like it's as far as we can go. But yeah, it gets tiresome. So let's get to another caller here.
We're in a turtle's dream.
We're in a turtle's dream, and that turtle is on top of another turtle, on top of an elephant.
Turtles all the way down.
Yeah, and a couple of other animals in there too, I guess. I know where I'm going with this. Let's go ahead and get to another caller here. We're going to talk to Doug, calling in from Idaho. Hey, Doug, what's going on?
Oh, wow. I've been listening to what's going on with you guys. Oh, Jesus Christ.
Oh, yeah.
What's going on up now?
Listen, let me tell you, I'm going to have a stiff drink after tonight, I think, because it's just, I don't know. I don't know what it is, man.
Gave me an idea.
I'm ready to do. Holy shit. I don't even know if my complaint is even on topic, but I just get concerned about people just believing. I think after watching, and I'm going to get a little political here, just people going down the road of believing what we see in politics.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many people believing this or that, not bothering to go down the road of doing research, and it goes down the same road with the pandemic. Nobody's doing research with whether or not they should wear masks or not, and it's really disturbing to me, and it's frustrating to me. I live in Idaho, and I'm in one of the states where people here are not taking it seriously. And my lady works at Costco, and she's concerned. She wears a mask every day. She's worried about bringing it home to me. She's worried about bringing it home to family members. And it really is disturbing to me, and I just wish people would take it more seriously. And so I just, for me, why is it that people, especially in my state,
are more concerned about their individual freedoms than concerns about protecting people, other people. And
I have a lot of thoughts about this, Doug. I have a lot of thoughts. I want to let Jmike go first, and then I'll give mine because
I'll be short and sweet. I live in Georgia, so like there's no real mask mandates, and that's at least I see people in the gas stations just not wearing them, and it's things like that. So it's pretty bad here in that aspect too. I would, before I hand it to Dan, I would just, and this is more rhetoric, but I do think it's odd that the people who are very pro-life, all of a sudden now like life isn't as important to put on the mask for other people. It seems kind of contrary there, but then at the same time too, it's like the people who have argued against that have been like, well, you don't wear a mask and you could have the cold and hang out with somebody who has HIV and get them sick and die. It's like all you're doing by presenting that argument is giving me more reason why I should wear a mask when I'm sick at all times, right? And so it's like the arguments there, just like they don't, like the light bulb doesn't click, and it's strange.
Well, I would say, man, so I'm not an expert in many things. I'm not an expert in this. All I would say is I went to college for part of this, is my communications studies background. And part of what I did study was talking about the history of world communication and, the communication infrastructure that we have in the United States. I think is a pipeline to the beliefs of the average American. And especially now with the internet, now that we have these more isolated pockets of beliefs and stuff, like I don't think people realize, like, if you don't have as much of a scare for the coronavirus as somebody else, if you are skeptical about the masks and stuff, that's as much of a cultural belief as it is like an epistemological one. Because if you believe that, chances are your friends are also believing that. Like, I hang out with Jmike and I hang out with the people at the ACA. So I'm talking about atheist stuff. I'm talking about skepticism stuff because that's in my milieu. Whereas I imagine the people that around where you live at, Doug, they probably don't know a lot of folks like you that have these other kinds of opinions. And if you're staying in these kinds of bubbles, if you're watching certain news or you're reading certain news, or just if the only news you get is from maybe your conservative workplace or your liberal workplace or wherever, like that's where you're going to get your beliefs from. It's not necessarily comes from a full investigation of issues. It's just like, this other person believes it and I trust them, and so I'm going to believe it. It's really that simple. It just really is. So
I know. It's just so sad. So Dan, it just breaks my heart because I feel like sometimes I'm one of the few people in Idaho. I mean, I know I'm not, but it just feels like there's just so many people in my area are just like, I mean, because my lady, she works in Costco and she sees so many people trying to drive into that store without wearing a mask and just saying like, they don't care about anybody else. And it's so sad.
Well, Doug, let me give you this at least.
It's like, why are you so selfish? Why are you?
I know. It's awful, but let me give you this this kind of thing to think about. I'm from Waco, Texas. Okay, before I moved to Austin, I lived in Waco. I started doing this show when I lived in Waco, Texas, and I was like one of the only atheists I knew there. And I felt terribly alone a lot of days because I could be free and talk about this stuff on Friday nights and talk to people like you, Doug. But the rest of the week, I couldn't really talk about this with pretty much anybody except a couple friends that I had that were there that believed the same way I did. But while I lived in Waco, I did end up having a couple conversations, candidly, because I was younger at the time. It was a bit harder for me to talk about this stuff than it is now. But like, I think I did end up changing some people's minds through my conversations there. And if I stayed in Waco, I would continue to do it. It's easier for me to be a loud and proud kind of atheist here in Austin because nobody really gives a shit here. They really don't. I mean, like some do, but like it's not as bad. But like, you can do what I did, Doug, when I was in Waco, and you can be that person that is starting to change people's minds and maybe could organize other people that feel the same way because there is not a lot of atheist groups in Waco at all. There's a lot of churches though, but it doesn't have to be that way. Change does come from people deciding to make a difference. And I truly think at the end of the day, one of the best ways to change this person's mind is through conversations. It's not just sending them a book and hoping that they read it, or sending them a lecture or whatever. It just comes from having talks like you and I are doing. So I take this despair and turn it into a purpose, Doug. Do something with it, because like us in Austin, we're counting on you to do something in Idaho, because I can't affect Idaho like you can. I really can't. If the only way I can is if you send this video to somebody else in Idaho or something, because it's just I don't have that ability. So just keep fighting the good fight, man. I don't want you to feel despair and give up, because we're all in this. We're still here. And there's good people that are really fighting this fight. People like Jmike and others that, still believe in things like truth and
maybe the is-ought gap, Hume's is-ought gap can be bridged by the mask fact, right? Like, you ought to wear masks, I think is a pretty valid thing to kind of say there, right? It's like, my thing is like, let's just like say they don't work or something, right? Like someone has that, like, why would you like limit yourself to a potential way of helping people? And it just seems weird even on the hypotheticals, but
yeah. I don't know, Doug, I hope that was helpful. Was that helpful at all for you? Oh, Doug, are you still there? Oh man. Oh, we dropped the call with Doug.
I think he took your advice and went straight out to
maybe he
start
did
hand delivering masks.
I hope he got most of that. I still stand by all that. I mean, and this is for anybody that's watching this that feels alone, man. Like I get that. I get that really, really hard. I mean, like I think we all have family members that we disagree with on this stuff. I think we all know people in our lives that we wish could change, but people do change their minds. I'm an example of that, and other people are too. It's not the end just yet. It really isn't. I know it feels like it, but we still have a fighting chance here, people. If it was really the end, then like shows like this just wouldn't be here anymore. But they still are.
Jesus would be coming back if it was.
Jesus will be coming back. So. That's true too. But I don't know. We got to keep going, guys. We can't give up now. 2020 has been pretty crazy and demoralizing, but it's still 2021, baby. The ride's not over. So let's on that note keep going to some other callers here. I want to get to Kevin, who's calling in from California. Kevin, your call is very different from our last conversation. So what's up, man?
Hey guys, thanks for having me on. I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much for promoting naturalism in this show. I feel it's very underrepresented. We hear a lot about humanism and not so much about a naturalistic worldview. So that's very important to me.
Oh yeah.
I'd like to preface by asking both of you, do you think it is more or less probable that intelligent, technologically advanced life forms exist elsewhere in the universe?
Dan, do you want to start?
It's possible. I have no idea how probable. I don't know if anybody can really say with certainty how probable, because the argument I always fall back to is, the data set that we have for life existing is one, and that's here on Earth. We haven't really confirmed that anywhere else. We, hypothetically know that it's possible on some other places in our solar system, so different kinds of life. And we understand besides carbon-based life, there could be other forms of chemical life. But yeah, like I don't know how probable it is. I would agree it's possible, though. I haven't seen anybody demonstrate that it is completely impossible. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I would say to I don't want to have like a fallacy of composition or division where I'm kind of inferring a part and extrapolating it to like the whole of things, which I think is a thing a lot of people do. But I would say I do believe aliens exist, especially to that level. I'll try to take my Star Trek like biases out of here, but I kind of relate this to like the agnostic atheist thing, with the distinction between an agnostic atheist. It's like, I believe in aliens, right? I don't know that's the case. So I would take an agnostic position, but I still believe in them. I still have a positive belief that is the case. I have no real knowledge of that. Now we could use like the Drake equation if someone thinks that's viable or things like that. you could do all those things and that could be good for you and all that. I just think when you do that, you might kind of run into these fallacies of composition or division. And I think it's just like anything else. It's best to kind of go where the purported evidence leads you. And kind of depends on how you view that now. You might be able to say, dude, just based on the sheer size, like there's no way it's not. And that you could go that route. And I don't think I'd fault you maybe. I mean, I'd have some problems like epistemologically getting there and stuff or the method maybe, but yeah, I think it's to me, it seems to be that would be the reasonable case, but it also doesn't change my worldview if I find out I'm wrong. So.
Okay, well, that
kind of under that.
My story. I know you guys are limited on time. I'll keep it brief. So my story and the background. I'm an atheist. I consider myself very skeptical. But when I was a teen, I had an experience that is still unexplainable to me. Me and a friend of mine. My friend is deceased now, so unfortunately he's not around to tell this with me. But briefly, basically, we're in rural Northern California, and he and I were smoking pot on the porch one night, as we did often. But we both experienced this phenomena where it seemed basically what happened was the sky, for lack of a better word, it darkened. There was a cloak. The stars that we saw above us were black and white, which could have been natural. But then we both saw a flash of bright white light, and both of us experienced a significant loss of time, about 3 to 4 hours, and awoke at the same time. And I attributed that to kind of maybe an extraterrestrial phenomenon, and he attributed it to more of a spiritual or religious type of experience. And we both kind of agreed not to talk about it after that. But I've kind of been left with this as an atheist, as a skeptic, how to explain this and kind of investigating other alien abduction experiences and things like that. And so that's kind of a big gap for me.
I hear you, Kevin. I'm going to be honest with you, though. It's hard for me to accept that story when you start off saying we were both smoking pot. And that's nothing against you. That's nothing against your ability to be skeptical or reasonable. But if you're telling me that you were doing hallucinogens, then that tells me that you weren't in the most sober state of mind. And so it's going to be hard for me to assume that your interpretations are going to be necessarily accurate to what's actually happening in reality. That's the first thing that I'm going to go to. It seems like that's going to be the common denominator if you guys are both smoking for me. But
I would say the same thing too. It would be, that seems to be the control, that if you take that control out, I would be wondering if look at your perception, right? Mm-hmm. Your perception's changed, regardless of what people want to view, THC or how it affects people drastically very differently. I've witnessed people as if they were
to be fair,
on crack or something, right? It's like it affects people very differently, but some people are very. I'm sorry?
I've smoked pot before and since, and never had a comparable experience to this, though. This was a one-time thing. I mean, so it's kind of an anomaly.
It's going to be hard to make an accurate judgment of your experiences during and after the fact. I've definitely had an experience or two on pot that was super, super crazy. I thought I was dying. When I ate a brownie one time, and it was unreal. It was the worst thing I've ever experienced in my life. And I think if I was a Christian, I would have said I was taken control by demons in that moment, because that's sure what it felt like. But the truth was, I had a substance in me that made me experience that thing. So I can't explain it as anything else besides that.
Well, yeah. And then also we have the kind of the aspect of that people in sober aspects are doing this, they have these kind of experiences, or we can go to near death or any of these things that they can't explain, ghost, all these types of things, where they're in a right frame of mind, and we still can investigate a lot of those cases and find out the natural causes way more reliable than what you would say. Now, it's not to deny that you didn't have the experience or that it wasn't that, but I still just think you have an experience that's questionable and unknown. And I would think the control there with having your perception changed is going to be, like Dan said, a really big factor in that. And to kind of piggyback on what he's saying, my experience is I've thought things that weren't there like 80% of the time in those circumstances, right? But so I would say that would be the deception of your mind. And look at an optical illusion book, right? That's all you got to look at real quick to figure out your mind can play some pretty crazy tricks on you. So.
Yeah, and the other thing too is, Kevin, if aliens are real and if abductions are real and if this is happening, like there has to be other evidence besides, a story of two friends who saw something one time when they were smoking together. Like that. I mean, it just has to be that way. That it's statistically, it wouldn't make sense if this was the only instance where that would happen, I would think, but I don't know. You'd have to tell me. But anyway, I'm sorry to be that guy, Kevin. I don't like being that guy, but to like shoot people down. But like that's just how I feel about it. But I'll give you one quick chance to respond here before we get to our next call.
No problem. Thanks, you guys. No, I just wanted to have some fun with you. This was a great show, and shout out to Neil604 Atheist. I'm looking forward to talking to him next month.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Neil's awesome. I like to just joke around and say he's my internet dad. So.
Dude, Neil is the best. He has been supporting Truth Wanted almost since its inception. Like, he's been a patron for a long time. Love Neil. He's super cool. Glad we got to shout him out this week. Thanks so much for calling, Kevin. Appreciate it. And, look forward to hearing from you again. I love me some Neil, man.
Yeah, I've gotten like so many people like, are you like his son? I'm like, we don't even live in the same country, but it's
the beard, isn't it?
It's the long hair and the beard and the
attitudes
the
about
atheism.
life.
Yeah, the atheism, I guess. I don't know.
I hear you. We're gonna take one more call here before we wrap things up, and then, guys, if you're watching this live, we're gonna go to the after show Discord after this, so don't tune away just yet. Come talk to us there, and before we do that, though, we're going to talk to it's either Denise or Dennis calling in from Arizona. So sorry, not sure what the pronunciation there. What is going on?
Hey, how's it going, guys? It's Dennis.
Awesome. What's going on, Dennis?
Sorry, I'm not great with computers, at keyboards and such. It's just not.
It's all good.
So I grew up in Arizona, kind of in the woods. Well, not woods, but in the desert. And my family and I would travel by RV from place to place. And no offense to your previous caller, but obviously, he's probably high as shit. He didn't know what he was seeing. I've kept a log. I got my logbook. I've kept a logbook of every encounter that I have had at night with the motion on these things. So it's UFOs one thing, but this is different. This is for sure. I'm convinced, at least, that it is 100% something alien. Something from another planet. These things can move, like slowly and then just take off like nothing else. So, and I've logged it. So, like in the year 2009, I had 7 different events on April 27th, April 11th, April 12th, May 9th, May 19th, June 1st, June 10th, July 5th. All of these dates are the dates that we saw the same events. And I think that there's a common denominator there with what I'm seeing. And it kind of came to a head back, this is in January 3rd, this is 2010. I was on a trip with some of my friends, Gary, Daryl, and Jake, and I were out, doing what we do, spending some time out in the desert. And at that morning, very cold night, I could tell that the lights were kind of getting closer and closer. And eventually I kind of blacked out. And when I woke up, I had that. It's almost hard to describe, almost like saying it's a new color. These things on I guess the ship or whatever. But unlike all the other stories that I've ever heard on your show, Dan, I love your show. And Mark, I'm sure you got a great show too. I just haven't seen it. And, but unlike any of the other callers, I actually have physical evidence. So whatever happened on that ship, there was like these like metal tools, and I was able to get a piece of the metal tool and bring it back.
Wow. A piece of the metal tool and bring it back while you were on the ship.
No, not while I was on the ship. It was, it's really hard. I mean, obviously they had drugged up or something. I don't know, but I knew.
Well, do you have the object, is what you're saying?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Have you taken any steps to go get the to go have it checked out, because we have people that like date tools to a specific time periods, right?
That's the purpose of my call. That's the purpose.
Okay.
Hold on, I got to move my documents here. The tool. So whatever happened on the ship, they brought the, like, I don't know what they were planning on doing, but you know how you just get a feeling it's not good. And I knew that I had to make it like show that I was worth leaving alone or whatever. So I did everything I could to fight back, and the blackout went away. You know, like I blacked out again and I woke up, but I still had that peace. And I live in a really, really small town in Arizona. You know, like 35 people. But there's a guy, there's a metal shop in town. His name's Fop. So Fop, the guy down there, he's got a metal shop, and I took it to him to see if he could, because he's got a furnace, so he can melt stuff down. And I'm telling you right now, nothing he could do could deform this metal. All right, he couldn't hammer it, he couldn't heat it up. Wait. This metal.
Yeah, that wasn't what I had in mind.
Yeah. So like, I don't really care if a guy can break it down or not. We can chemically know what that metal is, right? Like we can still figure that out.
That's what listen. So that's where I need help, because I know that after this experience, the government knows what I have, and how do
you know the government knows what you have?
Well, so
because you can see look when you see you've seen the monoliths, right? You've seen there are governments.
Are you trolling me right now?
This sounds like this is Poe's law. I'm starting to think, but when you say the monoliths, like I'm starting to lose you quick.
You've been pranked.
All right.
I don't hear what.
I think he said we were being pranked.
It cut out. So the punch.
Lame.
It's funny that the punchline of you're being pranked got cut out is almost like useless. But
this would be funny if this was a show where we really believed in like UFO stories and stuff, but like we don't. It wasn't like I was gonna be like, oh, I must believe in UFOs now because this guy told me, and he found like. I was gonna ask because like
all the stuttering and stuff was making me feel like he's coming up with it on the spot. Is what it sounded like. So but
I don't know what to do with that. I mean, come on. You spent I saw you waiting in the thing too. You spent 45 minutes in the chat. It's a Friday night, man. Go do something fun. Well, I guess not right now because of Corona, but like you can play like Nintendo Switch or something. Like, don't waste our time. Don't waste people to make our shows.
I apologize, Dan. I talked to a lot of people on Discord, and I'm not sure if maybe like they were just like, "Oh, I'm gonna waste his time" or something.
Maybe so. But here's the thing,
because the voice sounded familiar. I will say it sounded somewhat familiar. I was like,
I thought he was gonna go somewhere cool. I was like, "Oh, cool. We have like something more than the regular kind of call." That I don't know.
I was looking forward to it. I was looking forward to it too. Aliens are cool, Dan. We're gonna. You know what you're gonna have to do? You're gonna have to invite me back on, and then maybe we'll get another one of those calls, right? Like that's the only.
Oh, is that how this works?
That's the only reasonable explanation.
That's the only
way to get to me, right?
I think what we can at least do for you, Jmike, is we can at least plug your stuff and tell people where can people find you at if they want to get more of you.
Definitely. So Axioms On Trial on YouTube. That is the best way. You can email us at axiomsontrial@gmail.com if you want to be on the show. We try to make it really just for theists or people that have extraordinary claims. You can also find me on TikTok at Atheist Jesus is the handle. And then, so pretty much go there. And tomorrow we actually have a show. Cease to Know will be talking with Dr. Matt DeLockery, who is a New Testament or has PhD in New Testament studies. You can go back before then and watch my conversation with him about the problem of evil and God's actions within the Old Testament. And so there's some fun stuff there. If you like science, those kind of things. I'm bridging a computer programming degree into computational biology. So I'm getting more into like the evolution biology type of talks and things like that. So there's a lot of different grounds to cover there.
Cool. Sounds really awesome, Jmike. Guys, definitely check that out. But don't go away just yet and go to his stuff, because we're going to go to Discord, like I said just now, right after the show, right after I tell you guys where you can find me at. Hi, ObjectivelyDan. This is Truth Wanted. This show is on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts. Please like and subscribe on there. Leave a comment if you want and tell us, hey, I like this show, or hey, that Dan guy, he kind of sucks. Don't write that, please. Well, I mean, you can't. It's your choice. But point is, that's where you can do that at. there's a couple of different ways you can support the show. One of the ways is patreon.com/truthwanted. Again, if you're watching this show as well, you can do that donate now thing in the chat. That's what we're doing now instead of the super chats. And more ways to connect to and help out the show as well is our merch store. That's another way, guys. We got the Truth Wanted masks in there. We got the hoodies. It's hoodie season again. And got the if you live up here, rest of you guys, I don't know, but up here, yeah. Wear those hoodies, shirts, do whatever. And if you want to get connected with me in other places, a couple ways you can do that. You can follow me on Twitter at ObjectivelyDan. And you can also go to our Facebook fan group page. It's pretty rad, where people who like the show can talk to each other about what they believe and why. And one last way to get in contact with me is an email. It's truth@atheist-community.org. I read all the emails you guys send me. I haven't gotten a lot of emails from you guys. What's up? Come write to me. I want to know what you guys think about things. Guys, please remember, vote for the golden Picos. The cutoff for that is going to be December 20th, but you can vote for that right now. It's going to be a really fun show. We got some fun ideas coming up for the end of the year here, so I'm looking forward to doing that. And last but surely not least, I have to thank the wonderful, awesome, fantastic people that help make this show happen every week. It's the crew, y'all. It's the ACA crew.
Yeah, can I throw out? They're like, for the audience, like they're the most top notch. Just Greg was really awesome. I just wanted to throw thanks out to them. They've like blown my mind on this from trying to produce shows and stuff. I'm just like, wow, you guys are a whole nother level. So there's a lot that they're doing behind the scenes that definitely needs appreciation for sure.
Yes, that's Greg, our executive producer, and as well as all the other gang that's up there. They're really, really cool, and this show wouldn't be here without them. So I gotta shout it out to those guys. Jmike, is there anything you want to say before we kind of end the stream for tonight?
Yes, and I'm so glad you asked me. I really want to thank you and the crew again, and like I said at the beginning, this is crazy to me to even consider being on an ACA show. I can't tell you how many times I've been pulling over into gas stations, watching clips of you or, whether it be Talk Heathen, or anything like that, where I'd be like, no, I'm going to go inside the gas station and get my drink, but I'm going to finish this clip, and then now it's like crazy to think that I'm kind of in that seat, so to speak. So thank you so much for that experience. It'll be cherished for me for the rest of my life. That's for sure.
Oh, thank you so much, Jmike, for being on. We loved having you, and I love doing this show with it. It was a great episode, and thanks to all you guys who watch and call into the show. You guys are great. But for now, I have to say, remember to always keep wanting the truth, and I'll see you next time.